Conadeti is a commission, a recent commission that was created according to the law of demarcation that was approved in 2003. So Conadeti is the National Commission for Demarcation and Titling of what was the former Mosquitia, according to treaties and agreement that was established in 1860 with the Managua Treaty, and 1905 with the Harrison-Altamirano Treaty that annexed the whole Atlantic coast, the Mosquitia coast, to Nicaragua. So there were several different moments of recognition of the communal territory to indigenous people, and finally today there is a law that enables indigenous and Afro-descendant people to claim the territory, the collective territory that was the former Mosquitia. So to carry out that process, it was necessary to create the National Commission for Demarcation that is within the law. It says create the National Commission, and it is integrated by different institutions and one representative of each ethnical group inside the Atlantic coast, which is Garifunas, Ramas, Miskitos, Sumos, Creoles, which form also part of the directive board of Conadeti. Conadeti also includes each one of the municipalities that are on the Atlantic coast. It includes and presides, it is spearheaded by the president of the two regional council, North and South, which alternate the presidency every 2 years. It also has members of the national government. So the members in total of Conadeti is approximately 32 members. So that's the National Commission. It's an institution that by mandate and within the first consideration must look out for the demarcation of these communities, indigenous and Afro-descendants. In 1860, when the Mosquitia coast was annexed to Nicaragua, because it was under a British protectorate, you know, and there was an agreement between countries that did not take into consideration the Mosquitia. So, you know, all in a sudden we wake up being part of Nicaragua. Practically we were being submitted, colonized, conquered, you know, and was not a process of annexation where we come together and we agree on something. Big extension of land were being taken away from the people. So the law is an act of justice more than anything else. And that is what the Pacific people do not understand, that this is just an act of justice of what was to be taken into consideration from that moment, especially to indigenous people, then afterward black people. The problem of the Atlantic coast was mostly a problem of self-determination. The annexation talked about self-government, and it talked about respect between nations, but this didn't happen. The Nicaragua government at the time did not respect our land, and gradually we start seeing process of colonizing and conquering and destroying our natural resources. All the revenues that was coming from the natural resources was going even back to the Nicaragua government, but it was not being invested into our region.
And that's the biggest problem.
That's the biggest problem. We identify all the different forms of land tenure. Number one, if it's private. Number two, if it's agrarian reform. Number three, if it's a collective title, because some communities have collective title from 1905, from the first Chalky Commission that began to order the land on the Atlantic coast. Did not continue because the condition was not able. Then beside that, you have whenever you identify that there is problem, you go into a mediation. That mediation is setting the base for the last stage, which is the healing stage, which is the saneamiento stage. Conadeti is responsible to create different types of mediation processes. So this helps us to reach to some level of understanding that whenever we extend the title, it doesn't create another conflict, right? So we had problem within communities, and the experience of our Tada. When I say our Tada, Rendell belongs to the community of our Tada, Urwa community. Yes, and their neighbor, which are mosquitoes, and we had to sit down and find a solution that would be like on a permanent base. Solution where the two communities or the two territories or the two nations can come together and identify, in a friendly way or a possible friendly way, how can we solve this, problem of land overlapping, for instance, or the dispute of natural resources that could create conflict, We also had negotiation with Spanish-speaking people, they're mestizos, that had created a whole situation within the demarcation process, because they are claiming land as if the law covered them. The law covers them as individual and private people, but not as a collective right to claim land. So it is a situation that is not so easy, but we have had different moments of mediation and reaching to some agreements that enable us to continue to the other stage, which is the titling. In that saneamiento is where the community set foot also to see how they are going to deal with the previous condition of the diagnosis, where you had the problem, identify a lot of people without title, people that recently came in, and people that are claiming big extension of land because of personal matters or because, it is not totally protected, by no title until when it happens. So it is a lot of situation there that is so necessary, and we have a manual of procedure to go towards this process of demarcation. We must, for instance, have, at the beginning in the diagnosis, the procedure established that we must go to each mestizo house to find their land tenure. The problem is that we used to go and they did not give the information. Then how am I going to know your problem if you are not telling me the problem? So it was creating practically a handicap towards the demarcation process. We had to modify the manual, and by modifying the manual, we said, we invite you to come whenever you feel like. But you not coming is not going to prevent the demarcation process, right? So what took place is that they got very uneasy, the mestizos, because they said, we are their right. We said, your right is inside the book. You just read it and you can identify that it said in the Article 37, if you do not have a title, then you can rent, but we must order the land. If you have a agrarian reform title of 50 manzana, we'll let it be 50 manzana, not 500 manzana. So gradually, Spaniards from the Pacific, they started to understand that this is not a racial problem. The demarcation law is not something to run no one off the land. It's to give rights to who have it according to the agreements, number one. And number two is to order the land, because they started to create an ecological disaster.